Okay, let me give you a overview of the structure of this dissertation as religious assimilation inclusion. This dissertation, and there are three parts. And let's see part one. Part one has chapter one and chapter two. Let's check out chapter one. Okay, chapter one presents the background of the problem, also uh, the limitations of the study, and also the research strategy here. That research strategy talks about 4 case studies: Jehovah's Witness, a house church, Vida Abundante, non-Pentecostal megachurch, and the Centro Evangelístico de Zapote as a neo-Pentecostal megachurch. The categories that were used to describe these case studies are assimilation strategies of each group, leadership structure, the building, describe how the building, and the meetings, also description, and then an interview of the dropouts, an interview of those being assimilated. Okay. Now, part of the research strategy, we also interview dropouts as exit interviews for the newcomers, the month 6, and also interview leaders. Okay, and then I also executed a longitudinal survey of newcomers. Um, this was a phone interview of newcomers, week 1 after their first visit for the first time to each group, week 2, month 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, I also did a participant observation that vary from different congregations, depending if they were more complex in their um, rituals, let's say. So it took me from 4 weeks. I would say the most simple group was the house church, and then the most complex group was the Pentecostal group. But it took me from 4 to 8 weeks of visiting in order to get what I would say a description of these groups. I also talk about the terms, assimilation as culture learning, and then description of culture, description of newcomer, and then comes the theoretical framework within chapter 1. And there were 2 main uh, important theories in this framework. The first one was kingdom theology and the different perspectives within kingdom theology, and the second one was church growth. And there were other ones like language socialization, organizational socialization studies, religious studies, social interactionism, and sociology and assimilation studies. That was for chapter 1, in what it was part 1. um, Chapter 2 had to do with more of a historical background of Costa Rica. So I'm presenting a um, religious perspective of the history of Costa Rica. In this case, as you see, and then um, comes part 2. Part 2 have um, part 2 has chapter 3 to 6, chapter 7 and 8. Let's see this chapter. These chapters 3 to 6 is a description of for each one of the case studies. The categories were assimilation strategy, leadership structure, the building, the dropouts, meetings, and those being assimilated. More of a phenomenological description of each one. Okay. Then we have chapter 7, Chapter 7 is an analysis of all those case studies, bringing together all those variables, buildings and meetings, church size and assimilation, image and identity of each group, the environment in those groups, leadership system, the secret of their growth, and those being assimilated and those dropouts. And then finally, in part 2, we have chapter 8 is the whole more quantitative part of the study. That is the longitudinal phone survey interviews, 19 informants. They were the newcomers. The variables for week 1 was, in this case, the week 1 was included the variables church of origin of informants, evaluation of the first visit, if they had visited other churches, how did you know, come to this church? What did you hear for the first time about this church? Personal lifestyle transitions in the last 2 years, and what is your idea for coming to this church? Also here included the same variables to compare. Was from week 2 through month 5, basically 6 uh, uh, sets of interviews. So, and excluding, are you a new person who's coming to this church, for example? I also presented a way to compare the mega churches with the smaller churches in regards to assimilation, and then their experience at worship. If they felt invited to participate in special activities that the church organized, and if they participated in those activities, how did they get informed about the church beliefs and activities? If they invited others to come to church with them and who they invited, if they participated in any special event that provided them spiritual growth, their personal contact with leaders, if they receive a phone call or an invitation from the church, and their regular attendance to church, and if they visited other religious groups. So these were the variables for um, chapter 8, what it was, part 2. Okay. Now we have a part 3, and part 3 is chapter 9, and chapter 9 is the concluding thoughts and recommendations for assimilation in Costa Rica. And it's here when I bring together, not mix, but bring together, when I talk about a creative tension between recommendations from church growth and balance with kingdom theology, you know, and I talk about a grace margin model. I talk about the importance of keeping a membership system, the reasons for those who come and stay and leave, strategies. This is my main contribution to this part. Strategies for a system of assimilation and inclusion. And then assimilation inclusion is bringing assimilation, a term, a sociological term within church growth, and then inclusion, more of a theological term within kingdom theology. And then ending with recommendations for further study. And basically, this is the uh, way to present um, all the 3 parts of this dissertation.